It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchi, and thanks a lot for joining us. Well, everybody's talking politics across the country. Last night, the People's Democratic Party, which is the main opposition party to the government, held their presidential primaries, and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar emerged as the candidate for the party. A lot to discuss with that, as well as INEC moving the date for submission of candidates to, I think, June the 9th, which also then prompted the APC to move their primaries to the 6th and 7th of June, which is happening about a week from now. We're going to be talking about all that, just trying to keep up with 2023 and the elections, because there's so much happening, even as far as the elections may seem. And I have it with me, Wale Oshunde, who's a lawyer. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so yesterday was not a surprise for a lot of people. There were a lot of permutations. People wondered if it was going to really happen. But Atiku is the candidate again for the PDP 4 years later. Any reactions to that? Were you surprised?
Of course, I wasn't surprised. And it goes to show that we're not serious. I just believe that in a country of over 200 million people, we should be able to have new faces, permutate to occupy the office of the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Yeah. For me, it is not acceptable that it is still the same old faces that we have around since 1991, 1999, that are still logging around, the corridors of power in this country. Of course, Atiku Abubakar has capacity. I believe so much in that. He's been vice president of the country. But then, this is 2022. I've been thinking about new faces, fresh minds, people who are technocrats in their rights, and then the likes of Atiku Abubakar and older contestants or participants would then sit somewhere and mentor these people, So I would have, of course, gone for a much younger person. Someone who is vibrant, someone who has this youthful engagement in him and all that. So I wouldn't have really expected that the opposition party exactly.
Yeah, but I hear you, because the talk has been with the fact that he's been the candidate. He's been running for president for 30 years now. I think 1992 was the first time he tried to achieve this feat. But he put out a video, I think a statement, a day before the primaries, talking about this is not a time for experimenting. Nigeria is literally at disaster. We know what the situation in the country is now. I've been vice president. I worked as the head of the economic team at a time, which many people look back now and say was probably our most progressive time economically in the country. So experience, private and public sector, also with age and with politicking. Doesn't that count for anything?
Well, it does count for something, and that was exactly why I said that I would have expected someone like that, with his experience, to sit somewhere on the corridors and then, engage fresh minds, engage, the youths, right? Mentor some of these people, advise them from time to time, so that they can achieve the best for this country. You see, look at everybody on the ballot yesterday. They are all these same old set of people that we know, right? And I do not think that in a country of over 200 million people, I keep saying this, I do not think that we should not be able to get vibrant people who are probably in the private sector, as a matter of fact, or, even if they've been in politics, people who have capacity, believe me, people who have been tested and trusted, we have them internationally. Look at Okonjo-Iweala, for instance. I'm so proud of that woman. Think about all that he has been able to achieve even for this country. Why not go for someone like that? Why can't we just go and talk to her? Bring her back home. She's there at the World Trade Organization. But think about what she can do for this country. She understands our economy. Our economy is in shambles right now. We need someone who can actually fix that. We need someone who can pacify Nigerians. We need someone who can give Nigerians hope. Look at Akim Adesina, for instance. That man over there at the Africa Development Bank. He used to say some people bought forms for him and whatever and all that. But how do you just buy a form for a man without first consulting him, without getting to know whether he's interested or not and all that? But we have vibrant people. We have people doing extremely well, and we cannot just talk to these people who can make things happen, and then we are saying we're serious. I do not think so.
All right, let's go now to our Abuja studios. Haruna Abdullahi is there, and he's joining us from our Abuja studios. Haruna, yesterday we did see, like I said, the PDP primaries hold. Atiku Abubakar, I think, got 371 delegate votes, followed by Wike at 237, then Saraki, and I think Pius Anyim. Before this, the big debate, more than anything else, was about zoning. About how it's been 8 years of the North. It's time for things to move south. Especially at a time where everybody's restive. People are very, very tense. The PDP still went ahead to pick a northern candidate. Do you think that would have any effect on their chances? How do you think this reflects on the party?
Thank you very much. The outcome of yesterday's primaries of the PDP actually came to us as expected. There wasn't something new that we're actually looking for. This is a repeat of history. It's a repeat of yesterday. Nothing new, just like Wale said. Talking about the zoning imbalance, I think this is actually another, immoral manifestation of politicians. At a time that we're talking of, having an egalitarian, equal disposition towards governance, a certain region is also in the forefront of clinging to power. I think, to be fair to the east of the eastern part of this country, as well as the north central, this ought to have been their time, whether you like it or not. But like what we've seen yesterday, a betrayal of trust. I'm personally saddened with the fact that the Southeast has always been in bed with the PDP. Then, just when we expected that something, good will happen, the same party, disappointed this very region. There are a couple of, people from the southeastern part of Nigeria on the ballot paper of the PDP, but expectedly, we saw an IM struggling with just 14 votes and a home buyer, with just a vote. It tells you that there's no gentleman kind of agreement in this party. I sincerely hope that the other party, that is the party in government, the APC, will not make the mistake of the PDP. Personally, I feel disappointed that the PDP actually looked beyond the east to the north. The north is just winding up power 8 years. Then we're having another northerner on the ballot box. I think this is not morally right, even though they say there's no morality in politics, but there should be fairness. If I remember, since 1999, the eastern part of this country have always had this intimate part with the PDP. In fact, in 2015, when the region had the chance to produce a Senate president in the APC-led administration, because of the love these people have for the PDP, Dr. Chris Ngige was roundly defeated, and a PDP candidate was, voted for. And at the end of the day, the region actually lost that chance of having a balance where you have a northerner as a president, the vice president from the southwest. Then ideally, we should have had an Igige as the Senate president, but that didn't happen. It tells you how a region has this intimate part with a political party. There is an severe kind of relationship that it's hard to, to explain. So we were expecting that kind of payback.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you in there, because I just want to play devil's advocate here, because we've all heard the PDP's theory, They have said that what's most important now is wresting power from the APC. How do you throw away someone who has shown capacity to get at least 13, 14 million votes, at least in the last election, with the fact that he's probably going to be running against a different candidate now from what he did the last time? Don't you see where the PDP might be coming from? Getting power first, which was the argument they made, and then we give it to the rightful owners in the Southeast. Does that make any sense?
I think this is where we're getting it wrong. It's not about political parties winning elections or an individual winning election. It's about doing the right thing. You can win an election and not still have a peaceful society. We're talking of equality. You can't say a northern candidate is the most suited for any political party or kind of. I really do not buy to that kind of thinking. The point is that we're all Nigerians. Every section of this country, every individual who has prepared himself for certain aspirations is qualified to be a leader. Now, mind you, we're talking of political parties winning an election, not necessarily individuals. But in doing that, you should also have these sensitive, feelings towards others. We can't continue to push because a certain region have the population. Thereby, you think just because we want to wrestle power from the APC, then those who are morally entitled to some kind of privilege will be denied of. I won't subscribe to that. I don't see that as playing out. I personally would not want to say that that is a right thing to do. It's just like going to the APC now, then an election, the party producing a northern candidate other than an Osibanjo or Yaya Bello. We're talking of a region like the North Central region that's never produced a democratically elected leader in Nigeria, just like the Igbo region. Anything out of this kind of consideration is not being fair politically. And you see how we've been lately. There's so much mistrust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll come back to you. Just want to quickly get Wale Oshinde now, because what he mentioned there was what I wanted to talk about next, APC. Everybody the argument has been, the fact that they had to move their primaries by a week was because they wanted to see what the outcome of the PDP would be. We'll be waiting for Mr. President to reveal who his candidate is, like he said in an interview a while ago, saying that, he had his candidate, but he wasn't going to reveal so he doesn't jeopardize the person's chances. Former President Goodluck Jonathan is in the conversation. We are hearing he has secretly gone to submit his form, or he has met with the chairman of the APC. Of course, like he mentioned, there's the vice president, there's Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There's all of these candidates, but we also have the Senate president in the mix. We have the governor of Kogi State, who also seems to be in the mix as well. Now that Atiku has emerged, do you think this is going to be their game plan, where they go with the northerner, or is the game still open, you think?
It's going to be very interesting. In fact, I look forward to the coming days. Believe me 100%, the APC was a bit very calculative and strategic, in their thinking. And I think that the chief reason, well, I'm not a member of the APC, but I think that the chief reason for postponing that primaries was, of course, number one, to see who would emerge from the PDP, and then they're able to plot their graph properly. Now, beyond that, I think another thing is that at the end of the day, when somebody finally emerges in the APC, they do not want other people who would have lost out, to move
to have time to move. Because it's literally a day or two before the INEC deadline.
Exactly. So, you are virtually left with no choice. Once somebody wins that, primaries, you just have to find a way to support that person because you have no other political party to run to. So I think that's actually the calculation there. And so it means that anybody who wants to move right now would have to take that decision, and just forget about contesting on the platform of the APC.
I guess like Peter Obi did.
Like Peter Obi did, exactly. So, but you see, for me, it goes to show that we're still not serious. We're still not serious. And like Abdullahi said, there was this gentleman agreement in 1998, to rotate power, between the South and the North. And we have simply decided to jettison that. It's a case of shifting the goalposts in the middle of the game. It's really unfair, and it's unfortunate. I feel that a candidate like Peter Obi, for instance, would have done, would have represented the people of the Southeast, fairly well.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that he's the only candidate, in this country. Like I keep saying, we have over 200 million people. You cannot tell me that if you go to the Southeast, you cannot present one fantastic and suitable candidate who will turn around the fortunes of this country. We really need to do something right now.
What do you think the impact of, we have a Kwankwaso now who is on the fringe with the NNPP, I believe. There's Peter Obi now who's with Labour Party. There are people who say, okay, maybe he might not necessarily be that much of a political factor with the PDP anymore. But the Southeast feels a certain kind of way, like you've said. Kwankwaso is also there to sort of be a bit of a problem in the North. Do you think these will play a role in how, things turn out eventually?
Ebuka, I'll be very honest with you. I see mergers likely to happen at the end of the day. I'm telling you, yeah. So because NNPP is like a fresh party right now to me. And the only stronghold that they have right now is probably in Kano. You see the point? And that cannot win a national election. I keep saying it. If you want to be president of Nigeria, you've got to be present in all the 774 local government areas of Nigeria. You cannot have skeletal activities going on in Lagos and Abuja, and then maybe somebody has, a good base in Kano or in Kaduna or somewhere and expect to win a presidential election. Do not forget, the constitutional requirement is that you must have won the majority total of votes cast in the election, number one, and then you also must have satisfied, the requirement of the Constitution as to winning at least 2/3 of the majority of, the votes cast in the 36 states and FCT. So that means that you need not less than 24 states. So if you don't have a big political party, and that's exactly why the APC and the PDP have continued to perpetuate themselves in office, because if you look around, you see that they are the two political parties with dominant presence in all the local government areas of the country. So if there is going to be a merger of some sort, by some big wigs, they've got to factor, that in. So they need a political platform with nationalistic, coverage to be able to then draw in support and then, of course, win the election or stand a chance at least.
So, Haruna, I want to come back to you because the people have always said, there's always a saying that both parties are the same, which is why politicians find it very easy to jump ship regardless of which party they belong to. What do you think is going to matter most in these elections? We have the Peter Obis, for example, who seems to have massive support online. There's, like I said, Kwankwaso, who is also doing his thing, with his movement. We don't know what sort of measures might emerge eventually. We're also going to have candidates of the APC as well. We know Atiku is with the PDP. Do you think individuals are going to matter more this time than parties? There are people who probably say they've always voted maybe the PDP all their lives. Do you see people switching based on the fact that somebody else matters more than the fact that they are not a member of their party?
Absolutely. Ideologies, it's what we lack in our political setup. So people this time around are going to look at individuals, what they actually are bringing to the table. And Osibanjo, Yaya Bello, and Amechi will be judged based on, an Atiku will be judged based on what they'll bring onto the table. So it's actually unlike before where parties actually matters. We're going to see an upsurge or a surprise kind of in 2023 because political parties will definitely be disappointed. You're going to have more of individuals triumphing over their own platform. So we shouldn't expect a repeat of yesterday where political parties actually matter. And again, luckily for Nigerians, a Buhari with the clouds, that kind of cloud will not be on the ballot paper. So we are going to judge the candidates based on their antecedents. Then, like the APC, it's so easy for them because we have people that we've tested in the last 7 years, so we can actually make an informed position based on their antecedents. And Asibanjo, for instance, is coming with the baggage of experience. We've seen how, with the women, the market women, a cross-section of Nigerians actually, show love to him. We've seen Bello very popular amongst the youthful population. We've also seen Rotimi Amechi, popular also in the far north. Then an Atiku, of course, the old brigade. We've seen, his own kind of base. So like Wale was saying, Kano may not, the new party may not really be a decider, except that it's going to weaken the position or the power of some the two-main political parties in Kano, for instance. Kwankwaso is going to play the devil's advocate. He's going to share the vote. He's going to divide the vote between the APC and the PDP in Kano. So, like we said, it's not central this time around. I think they are politically awoken now and ready to make a point that we are also not a pushover, just like the Southeast. Like we expected that to happen in the Southeast, but they actually missed the opportunity during the PDP primaries, where they actually voted, against Anayim, and other people from the East. So this time around, it's going to be individual strengths and not really political parties, because as we speak, the occupants of PDP yesterdays are today the landlords of APC. So there's really no difference between the two political parties. We should be more interested about, with the individuals, what they have and what they're actually bringing onto the table. So 2023 is going to be an interesting year.
All right. Wale, just to put you on the spot now, if you were an APC chieftain now, who's the ideal candidate now to pick to run against Atiku?
And I mince words. I wouldn't even mince words about that. Osinbajo, to be honest with you. He's tested and trusted. He's been vice president.
But how does that factor in, considering what PDP went for, trying to get northern votes and all of that? Does Osinbajo have that up north?
I think so. People have come to realize the fact that during the short period he was acting president, he was able to make meaningful impact. And that's exactly what we're yearning for. And then you see that vibrancy in him. He's still very agile, he's active.
Is that not more of the same, which is what most people think?
No, I don't think so. You see that Osinbajo is not a typical politician. You see he's more of a technocrat. He's a professor of law. I have so much respect for him. And I know that, yes, he's a pastor as well. So you have to think about, not necessarily...
But he's also been a part of the last 8 years.
Well, but you see that...
Isn't that going to be sort of a weakness for him? Because there are some people who you would, no matter what you tell them, they see him and they still see this government. How is that how is that not continuity?
That's right, but I mean, if it were Vice President Osinbajo, the selling point really is the fact that as a vice president, you really cannot decide for the government when you still have a president. Otherwise, you'll be seen as an activist vice president, and then someone who is excessively trying to hold on to power.
Okay.
That kind of a thing. So that was exactly what played against Atiku, in 2003. When the then president Obasanjo thought that it was actually being overly political, and that it was trying to hijack government from him. So as a vice president, you really cannot take decisions except the president is in alignment with you.
Thank you very much, Wale. Thank you very much, Haruna, for joining us. It's going to be a very long but interesting week. Looking forward to what chess moves the APC will be pulling up. Maybe we'll be back here next Sunday to talk about it.
Absolutely.
We'll take a break now. I'll be right back. Please stay with us. I'm back. We're still talking politics and the election, and I have here with me Timi Olagunju, who's a public affairs analyst. Thanks for being here. Today, I want to focus on a bit of, the mood of the nation. We're at a time where, probably one of our most insecure times in history. Literally every part of the country is burning. And we saw how that factored in with the Anambra elections, where the turnout was abysmal because there were fears about what could happen on election day. Elections, unfortunately, in this country have always been marred by violence and security issues. More so at a time now where there's already insecurity at this sort of palpable level. How worried are you about, as things build up to February next year?
Well, there's a reason to worry, but there's also a reason to hope. Because when you look at the trajectory of things, you see that Nigerians seems to be much more engaged civically in the process that builds up to the election. And as against what we had, in the last election, or what we had, in elections before this one, or in 1999. So somehow there is a building of civic momentum. And that building of civic momentum is an important milestone that we need to somewhat celebrate.
Yeah. What's from the security perspective, with the security operatives, are you seeing any deliberate sort of moves that are giving you this hope?
Well, on a lighter note, as deliberate as the EFCC being at the PDP convention.
But, which was very interesting, to be honest. I'm like, what are they observing?
Ghana go bags.
That was interesting, but go on,
But the point is the fact that, you see, when it comes to the context of what it is, the honor still boils down to we the people to begin to tell the institutions of governance how things should work. For example, institutions of governance that are key to the election. INEC is a major institution of governance key. The security apparatus or institution is a key part of that. So it's important that we start to tell them that we are not onlookers anymore, but that we're expecting them to work at a certain standard or threshold that we're going to hold them accountable to. Yeah. I think that's where we need to start from.
Very, very important. I think we're joined online by Rinu Oduola, who's an activist. Thank you very much, Rinu, for joining us. I want to talk about, I don't know if you saw the video that was online I think yesterday or 2 days ago, allegedly from an election somewhere in Lagos, I think Alimosho, where we had gunshots, and it's not very uncharacteristic of politics in Nigeria, but with that particular video, it was quite disturbing at the level of chaos and violence. What does that tell you about what's to come?
Well, I think that in that video, we did not just hear gunshots. We also saw citizens, fighting with each other, dangerous weapons being freely used in the presence of security operatives, in the presence of police officers, in the presence of soldiers, whose duty is to protect lives and property. They were just standing there while citizens were fighting with each other. The issue is that they have been bought by partisan members, who want them to do their bidding. So they just, stand aside and just watch. And we should now consider this in the larger frame of the general elections, where we have people who are committing electoral violence, thuggery, and all of that. And our security operatives who are supposed to be there are just standing aside. And this, still comes down to the question of, are we even going to have peaceful elections in 2023? Just like you asked, Barrister Timmy. The question is, why can't we even have a peaceful country? These days we've had increased violence, from the north to the south, virtually every region in Nigeria. There's been a dramatic increase in banditry, kidnappings, killings. And our government and security forces have failed, to respond effectively to these issues, to the threats to people's lives and securities. Then we should now examine the problem with the elections. We claim to practice a democracy, a government that is supposed to be for the people, by the people. But in Nigeria, are elections about the people? The answer is no. For a very long time, the elections hasn't been about the people, but about the leaders. We all know that once you win election in Nigeria, you have the imaginable wealth, privileges without accountability. That is the problem. Politicians collect salaries and allowances that cannot be justified. They are awarded or get contracts that the costs are inflated and probably are not going to be executed. They are going around in SUVs, with retinue of security personnel. And as long as this is the case, we are going to have mini wars on our hands, whenever there are going to be elections. Forget about the campaign promises. Our elections are not about the people. They are about the political class. So as long as we are practicing what I call MMM politics, where politicians will give 5% during campaign to take back 200% when they get into office, a systematic fraudulent situation, we cannot have peaceful elections.
Something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch on when you talked about, we also saw citizens fighting each other is very, very important because, yes, the politicians, we get to blame them a lot for all of this, and validly so. But the people are also sort of a pawn in this entire game. And it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon because we know, first of all, the state of poverty in this country. I don't necessarily like to use the illiteracy as an excuse because whether you're illiterate or not, you kind of know what's good for you. But, there's now a belief that what you can get at a time is what's most important against what you can gain long-term from these situations. The citizens have now become a part of this political system. And it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon, is it?
Well, I don't think that it's going to stop anytime soon if we do not address the causes and the effects, of this violence. You see, over the years, Nigerian politicians have become more desperate and desperate in retaining power, in being intolerant of opposition, criticism, and effort at replacing them. Nigeria is a broke country, like someone said, but politicians are spending billions of naira on campaigns, and vote buying in order to win the elections to lead a broke country. It's broke, but every elected political office holder will come out richer than they were before getting there. Nigeria is broke, but people won't stop killing themselves to get a chance at the seat of power. So can we actually say that these leaders are in the quest to serve the people? I think according to human rights, at least 100 people died in the elections in 2003. Not less than 300 people were killed in 2007. Over 800 people were victims of electoral violence in 2011, with more than close to 70,000 people being displaced. Like you said, some of the issues of poverty. And we could say that, poverty has been literally weaponized in the country. And our politicians have refused to treat that. That is one of the problems. Two is the issue of accountability that I've mentioned earlier. There has been little to no police response to reports to threats, acts of violence by hired political thugs, against voters, such as the instance in the Khartoum violence. At least 4 people were killed in that violence. How many people have actually been arrested? How many people have actually been prosecuted for what happened? Nothing has been done. Voters and election officials have either said that police officers will stand by or run away, when violence is happening in the country. Because this issue that we're talking about has to be treated. The causes have to be treated first, before then we can begin to talk about peaceful elections.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Renu. Let me come back with Timmy here in the studio, the violence is one thing, but I think the turnout for me is also very important. And some places where we don't even know if elections will hold. We saw, I think, it must have been a month or so ago, where people were trying to register for voting in Imo State. And we had this terrorists, like we have called them now, come and they killed an INEC official there and made everybody lie down. They were shooting in the air and saying no voting is going to happen here, which means no elections will hold in Imo State according to them. We're hearing a lot of that in the southeast. There are places in the northeast where we don't even know if elections are going to hold. Parts of the northwest as well. We're seeing what's happening in Sokoto recently. So how much of, I don't know how to put this question, but there's a lot more than even just turning out. We don't even know how seamless the elections will be, because security is such an integral part of this entire process, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And painfully so, like you've rightly mentioned, Nigeria is more divided than it was some decade ago, right? And because of that increased division, the challenge that comes with it is the challenge of agitation, terrorism, and also a challenge of a perception of inequitable distribution of resources and power. And that's the challenge that we are faced with as a country, right? And so with that challenge, that's a foundation. Like I like to say, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the makeup artist do than put powder, right? And so what we've had is a powdered approach to solving these challenges, the challenge of an increased division and perception of division in the country. That's one key challenge. Now, when it comes to voters' turnouts, there's something I'd like to mention. You know, sometimes we have a tendency, right, to blame people for not being able to come out on the day of elections. For example, INEC says there are over 80 million, you know, plus registered voters, and there are only 20 million people that voted for, you know, the current government. In the last election, there were over, I think, 37 million overall turnout of voters out of the over 80 million registered voters. Now, the truth about it is that INEC also needs to look inwards, because there seems to be a systematic disenfranchisement of people. And by this, I mean that how do you expect someone who became 18 when they were studying, for example, sociology in Uyo, and registered for their voters card in Uyo, and then election came, they had graduated and moved on to start working in Port Harcourt, to now easily move from Port Harcourt to Uyo to vote.
But INEC claims that moving is very easy now online.
Oh, yes. Interestingly, for many people that have tried, because I'm in the key process of trying to help people transfer their voters card,
polling booth,
the polling booth from one location to the other. But one key thing INEC needs to know is that even a lot of Nigerians do not know that they have to do these seemingly simple things. And a lot of Nigerians, too, do not even know where to do it. And that is a key challenge. It is not just about providing the infrastructure. You also must show people where to get what. That is very important. Secondly is the fact that even the very website itself, for some persons, it has not worked sufficiently well. You know, so those are the feedbacks, because feedback is the breakfast of champions. We know that Nigeria is much more divided than it is. Yes. We need to do something about that urgently. Yes. However, the little plugs that we can fix, we need to start fixing them, which includes that INEC needs to step up to its responsibility of ensuring that a democratic society reflects a democratic society. Because it is not democracy where certain persons are systematically and technically disenfranchised, who are even much more than the number of people that vote. So these are little issues we can plug aside the divided nature of the country.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. But I want to sort of talk about, you know, with the PDP convention yesterday and how this might affect the mood. You know, like I said, there was a lot of agitation for zoning. Zoning should not necessarily be a factor in any country when you're looking for the ideal candidate, but we're in a country where that kind of matters to a lot of people. And the Southeast has always said we need to be pacified. Do you see that having an effect on anything with regards to how they react at the end of the day, and with whatever also the APC might do with who they select.
And so, I talked about, this is a key question you asked. I talked about the fact that the perception of division is much more in General Buhari's government than any other government that we've seen in the last few years. That perception of division is much more. And to be fair to the Southeasterner, I'm from the Southwest, but I think it is time to open the floodgates for a competent Southeasterners to provide certain leadership to this country. Now, you might say that zoning is not, it's just a traditional way of getting things done. We must understand that culture, not politics, determines the success of any nation. Mm-hmm. And even the American system that we are quick to cite has its culture. For example, how do you explain rationally in an advanced democracy where a president that did not get majority votes, Donald Trump, became president because of electoral college? That is a certain culture ingrained in their system that is part of their democracy. Yeah. Now, zoning, for the sake of equity, has become part of the cultural norms or nuances around the Nigerian political environment. And it is important that we start to observe some of these cultural nuances, or else we would not have an equitable union.
Let me go back to Reno now very quickly. I feel like every conversation I have with people these days, some people are looking for ways to not be here even when the elections are happening. They say, let me go, let you people finish your thing and I'll come back. I don't know how that solves anything, to be fair. But what are you sort of expecting from government in the next couple of months? Because the primaries, this is probably the earliest primaries we've had in our history. We have like sort of a 8-month window before the main election. So a lot should be put in place before then. What do you really want to see happen?
You see, we should first address why people want to run away. And it's connected to the first question you asked me. You see, what happens when people lose hope in the government? One of the most dangerous things that can happen is for people to lose trust in their citizenship. How has Nigeria rewarded our citizens, with unemployment, failing institutions, insecurity? The government of the day, like Timmy said, seems to be missing in action. So there is chaos. Extreme work needs to be done to reinvent the thought of the Nigerian people, for us to realize that Nigeria is worth fighting for. Now, to ensure that, people have trust in this process, one is to ensure protection. Nobody wants to die. I don't want to die because I went out to vote for a politician or for a system that I've always known has failed me. That is the problem. It's the job of the INEC to ensure that the process for elections, free and fair elections, is regulated. It is also squarely the job of the police to secure an environment for elections to take place. But then the issue is that, like I said, our police have become tools in the hands of partisan members, of the political community or whatnot. The apathy of the electorate can be also partly explained, like the question you asked, because street and polling stations are not considered safe enough to voters. And then this now puts into question the legitimacy of mandates received during election. Because then even if the result meets the requirements of the electoral law, when majority of the electorate are disallowed from participating in the electoral process because of insecurity, then the basis of participatory democracy is diminished. In 2019, only 35% of the registered voters turned out to vote. That cannot be celebrated or described, rather, as a celebration of democracy. This is what we need to begin to fight against. Has justice been ensured for those that commit electoral violence, or are we, as a nation, just emboldening politicians to do whatever they like when they suit us? The issue is there can be elections, without democracy, but there cannot be a democracy without elections. Our elections must be free and fair. they must be secure as well, because they are the core of our democratic process. It is the duty of our government on all levels to ensure that the fundamental rights of citizens to vote, be voted for, are ensured, to guarantee the conditions of free and fair elections and all of that. And for us as well, no matter where our position is within the social structure of our society, we all have a role to play in election security. We cannot just sit down at home and, be engaging in helplessness. We all must have, speak up to alter the security architecture to become more election friendly. And that is what young people were trying to do during the NSAS protest. We must begin to occupy the office of the citizen, because whether we like it or not, Nigeria belongs to all of us. We must not watch while it degenerates into violence. We must protect the country by securing and watching over our votes to address political violence in any case. And for me, I think that in any case where electoral violence is recorded, both candidates must be investigated by security institutions, and if found guilty, disqualified by election by INEC. The issue starts with accountability.
All
and
right,
our police must have the capacity to secure the process of elections. If the Nigerian police is equipped to perform their elections, then people will begin to have trust. We must not also militarize our elections. It is very important.
We need to go. Thank you very much, Renu, for that. Thank you very much, Timmy. Hopefully, we're going to come back in a few months and be talking on a happier note or more peaceful note, because, like I said, the process is still a long way to go. Thank you very much for joining us today. We need to take a break now and come back with more. Please stay with us.
I am ready for your action.
All right, welcome back. We're going to talk about young people in these upcoming elections. There's a few names here and there that have popped up. Overwhelmingly, there seems to be a lot of children of politicians who have also made it through. But we're joined now from Abuja studios by Femi Bitoye to help us talk about this. Thanks a lot for joining us, Femi. I want to start off with, what are your impressions so far on young people and all the primaries that have been held across board? Do you think there's been enough of an inroad made by young Nigerians so far?
Okay, thank you, Ebuka. As we can see, the political space towards 2023, it's a bit dynamic, and the young people that have come forth to present themselves, I think we are having an increased number, because if we looked at it before the Not Too Young to Run bill was signed, we have like 24%. After that, in 2019, we have close to 35%. But in this 2023, we've seen an increase in numbers, and we need to redig our strategies as young people, because there's a wind that is blowing, and for us to really get involved in it, to increase our numbers, we need to look beyond some certain nuances that we used to play to.
Yeah, I hear you, but a lot of people celebrated, of course, and rightfully so, the Not Too Young to Run bill, which became law in the country. But I think after that, people have now realized that there's a lot more hindrances to being a part of this system for young people. Money has always been a part of the conversation. Are young people ever going to be able to raise this kind of funds that we hear that it takes to win an election? Then we saw what happened with Banky W over the weekend, where he was announced as the winner of an election, of a primaries of the PDP. His name was all over the newspapers the next day. 2 days later, we hear he's no longer the candidate. I don't know what the situation is with that right now with the party. But I saw a lot of young people who said, if this is what happens with politics, I never want to be a part of it. So scenarios like this are also sort of putting it in people's heads that this might not necessarily be the kind of system I want to be a part of. What do you say to that?
Okay, Nigerian democracy is still in the budding process. And if you looked at it, you talked about the issue of money. Money is the big elephant in the room, and we can't take it out of the whole equation. That's why you see youth, it's always advisable to go for probably National Assembly, State Assembly, where you cover little constituency. I was having a conversation with a friend. I told him, I said, you can consider going for House of Rep, because Mushin constituency 1 covers like just few areas. And with that, it gives you entrance and a say in the whole scheme of things. On the issue of Banky W, it's so unfortunate, and I believe PDP will know that they are playing with a time bomb, because for good PR, Banky W will be there for PDP. And for what we saw the video where the vote was counted that he defeated the other guy, I think Barrister Sam Ivoji. And after some minutes, like they always say that 24 hours is too much in politics. And it's quite unfortunate, but we believe something needs to be done because we don't trust the system. When it comes to politics in Nigeria, 3 things are very, very important to an average Nigerian youth. We looked at what? Cynicism, because we believe that an average politician in Nigeria, they go there for selfish inclination and polarization. And of course, the polarization comes in 2 ways. We are polarized and we also polarize ourselves. However, what has happened with Banky W shouldn't disenfranchise some of us that are interested in politics. You might look at PDP, you might look at APC, you might look at the third force, but you have to first of all do analysis of your local environment. Because in politics, it is not just about, I don't like PDP, I don't like APC. What if that is the platform that could give you an entrance? We've seen 1 or 2 youths that have done well. Yeah. Regardless of the platform that has brought them into power. So we need to understand that it is not really fine. We might look at the party, like you said in the first session. The person talked about, we might not look at APC and PDP as a whole, but we might begin to look at what? Individual. And the individual must analyze what is going on in my locality. You can look at it and say, okay, I've got entrance into PDP in my local area. Why not just me ride on the bandwagon of the PDP and get in and get what I needed to get as youth? And you might look at it, both APC and PDP in my area, they're not doing well. I can ride on my personality. Then what do you have to do? You have to go in, probably look at the third force. But I want to advise our youth, going into 2023, we don't need scattergun approach. We can't be fragmented. We need to have a united front if we really, really need to have a say in Nigerian politics, because 2023 is a major factor determinant. And we need to tell the old guards, because they've been making us to feel as if we don't understand politics. We need to let them know that, see, you have not created any corporate vision for us. From 1960, from the First Republic till now, nothing has changed. So we need to begin to look at it like, you know what? Take the bad seat. Why not just shift a bit and see new generation, see new energy, and see new ideas into the Nigerian political space? We've seen what has been happening online in the past couple of months. These are kind of the energy we intend to bring into the political system, but we have to be strategic about it.
Very quickly now, before we go, very, very quickly. I mean, it looks like we're starting to build political dynasties here very strongly. I saw a long list of people in politics whose kids won primary elections over the weekend. I think it was about 9 or 10 names I saw. Is that a good thing, you think? Yeah, because we open the door for young people, but the kind of young people that might be coming in are also people that are like an extension of the old guard. Does that work for our democracy, maybe?
Okay, you know, earlier I talked about polarization, that we polarize ourselves sometimes. You see, the truth is we need to understand that we need to come with a united front. Some are advantage. Of course, maybe we have the Okowa, the Iboris, the El-Rufais. They've got the advantage. But we should realize that they shouldn't be as bad as the old guards. So what we need to do as individuals is we need to get involved. So how do we get involved? We don't need to start saying, oh, because she's Okowa's daughter, we have to speak against her. No, it's a new generation, new energy. There are people that we think we should be able to connect with them. So we can't throw them away because they belong to the dynasty of the old guards. What we need to do is find a way to engage them. We need to understand the electoral process, then engage this youth. We need to come with a united front. Either we like it or not, it's still our time. And when we don't come with a united front, it might be a disservice to us, because one of the things that this old guard used against us is, and I think one political analyst said something, Demola Rewaju, said, when you join politics, your fellow youth, they will look at you as politicians. And politicians, they will look at you as what? As a youth. You see the problem? So we need to stop this stereotyping and begin to embrace ourselves, go with a united front, then begin to change the dynamics about Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Olufemi Bitoye, for joining us. We need to go now. Looking forward to having more conversations like this, and looking forward to the weeks and months ahead, but most importantly, the APC presidential primaries holding in about 6 or 7 days from now. And hopefully everything goes peacefully and election season continues to move on smoothly. I'll see you next Sunday. My name is Ebuka Obiuchi, and you have a great week.